They didn't even knock. They just stood there, my mother's arms folded, my father avoiding my gaze, my sister clutching her belly like a shield. 6 months pregnant. Do you understand? My mother said, they need the space more than you. The apartment I rented, renovated, furnished, and paid for every month. Never late, never noisy, never a problem. I handed over the keys, not because I agreed, but because I wanted them to believe I did. Growing up, my parents had 2 sets of rules. One for me, one for her. She was fragile. I was strong. She was still figuring things out. I was the one who should know better. When she got pregnant, their panic became worship. They needed to make room for her. In their hearts, their home, even my apartment. I became expendable. They said, it's just temporary. But I knew the tone, the kind of finality that whispers, we've already decided. So I smiled, packed quietly, leaving behind my plants, my favorite chair, even the coffee mug that said mine. But I didn't cancel the rent transfer. The first few weeks, I kept paying. I wanted them to think I had moved on, and I had, into a smaller, cheaper, noisier place downtown. But at least it was private. Every night, I sat by the window with a glass of wine, thinking about fairness, about how some people preach it, while living off someone else's peace. By the 2nd month, my sister stopped answering my texts. By the 3rd, my parents stopped pretending to check in. But the payment still went through, and I kept the receipts. Then, one evening, scrolling through social media, I saw it, my apartment, fully displayed in her story. The couch I bought, the rug I chose, the shelves I built, everything exactly where I left it. And there was her fiancé, barefoot, drinking from my mug. She captioned it, "Our little nest before baby arrives." Yay! That was the moment the switch flipped. I stopped being hurt. I started calculating. The next morning, I went to the leasing office, polite and calm, and asked for a copy of the current lease agreement. My lease agreement. Turns out my name was still on it. My parents had never changed the contract. They just told me to leave. Legally, I was still responsible for the rent. Technically still the tenant. So I stopped paying. 6 months later, my mother called. Her voice trembled. "Sweetheart, we just got a notice from the landlord. The rent hasn't been paid in months. What's going on?" I almost smiled. "Oh, I thought you took over the place," I said. "Didn't you say they needed it more than I did?" She hesitated. "Well, yes, but the lease is still under my name." "I know," I said. "They begged. Said they didn't have the money. Said my sister and her fiancé were already struggling with the baby on the way." I told them I'd think about it. Then hung up. I opened my laptop and began typing. The letter took 3 drafts to perfect. It wasn't angry, it was surgical. Every sentence designed to cut, not bleed. I printed 2 copies, one for my parents, one for the landlord. To my parents, I sent a letter. To the landlord, I sent proof, the lease documents, bank statements, and a signed transfer of tenancy agreement. Yes, I forged her signature, but with her permission. She was exhausted, suffocating under my parents' control. He'd been cheating. She wanted out. I offered her freedom. All she had to do was sign a few updates. The letter to my parents read, "Dear Mom and Dad, I wanted to help, but I figured you'd appreciate hearing from her directly since you asked me to make sacrifices for her comfort. I thought it was only fair to give her the voice you always took away. Attached is the lease agreement now held by your new tenant, her fiancé. He is legally responsible for rent, damages, and eviction. I am no longer your landlord's problem. You are. P.S. Tell him the baby deserves a better address." 3 days later, my sister called, crying, not because of me, but because he had vanished. An eviction notice taped to the door. My parents panicked. Everything they built on entitlement collapsed, and I didn't lift a finger. I just waited. They lost the apartment. I reclaimed the deposit. When my father called again to say he was disappointed, I said, "Good. That makes us even." Then I hung up. Now, when I pass that street, I don't feel anger, just quiet satisfaction. Sometimes justice doesn't need noise. It just needs patience and a signature in the right place.